We are like no.
Yeah, we are live now. I think you
We
can
are.
go ahead.
Okay, that's lovely. So good afternoon and welcome. My name is Priya Srinivasa and I'm part of the policy team at WhatsApp. I welcome you all to this fireside chat event and the launch of the Digital Skill Champions Program, a joint initiative by NSDC and WhatsApp. This is in line with the Government of India's vision of making India the skill capital of the world. India has the globe's largest informal sector and a diverse workforce across the grey, blue, and gig economy segments. This partnership is aimed to scale the impacts that WhatsApp and NSDC make in their respective fields of technology and skilling. The joint program will now come alive across the country through a series of engagements over the course of the next 12 months. This partnership will also enable the community of NSDC skill trainers to encourage an interest among students towards entrepreneurship and help in launching their small businesses. The training will introduce skill seekers to the WhatsApp business app and highlight the many aspects of in-app tools that help to automate and thereby enable small businesses achieve their skill aspirations. And now with that background, let me jump straight into introducing our most learned speakers for today's fireside chat. Dr. Manish Kumar, MD and CEO at the National Skill Development Corporation, and Mr. Shivnath Thukral, Director Public Policy at WhatsApp. Dr. Manish Kumar is the MD at NSDC, and during his tenure, he has particularly focused on improving the quality of private sector delivery of skills across priority sectors and making skills in India aspirational. Prior to his time at NSDC, he worked for the World Bank as India Country Coordinator and Senior Economist. He was also extensively worked at the World Bank in Middle East and North African countries. Manish also served in the Indian Administrative Services, occupying various positions in the government of Tripura up to 2011. He was selected as a Mason Fellow by the Harvard University in 2003 for his exceptional leadership in empowering tribal women in Tripura. Manish is also trained as an engineer from IIT Dhanbad and holds a degree in public administration from Harvard University and a PhD in public policy from the George Washington University. Let me now introduce our second speaker, Mr. Shivnath Thukral, who is the Director of Public Policy at WhatsApp. Prior to his role at WhatsApp, Shivnath was the Managing Director of Carnegie Endowment for International Peace and set up the global think tank's India office, leading operations and fundraising. Shivnath spent the first 15 years of his career as a journalist with NDTV and as the primetime presenter with a special interest in business news and policy analysis. He also later established the network's business channel, NDTV Profit, in 2003 as their managing editor. Prior to joining Carnegie, Shivnath led the global marketing efforts and digital communications at the SR Group. He's a noted speaker at numerous global events, including the World Economic Forum and the Milken Institute Conference, as well as several Indian industry summits on issues ranging from India's economic policies, domestic politics, and the impact of new digital technologies on society. With that introduction, let me kick off this event and hand over to our moderator, Venkatesh Sarvasiddhi, Senior Head, Digital Skills Partnerships, Policy and CSR at NSDC. Over to you, Venkatesh.
Thanks, Priya, for setting the context and introducing the speakers. I think this is a great opportunity bringing in both sides of the world, the technology as well as the policy level from an apex body, NSDC, in the skilling ecosystem together and building such interesting initiative around it. I welcome Dr. Manish and Mr. Shivnath to this interesting forum. So this five-side chat would be quite an interesting thing. So the way I would look into this is, moderate it with a series of questions, and also the audience who are attending today can keep typing their questions, and towards the end, depending on the availability of the time, we would love to even take up questions from the audience. We welcome you both. To start with, Mr. Shivnath, WhatsApp and NSDC joining hands to drive this digital skill champion program. Can you elaborate a little bit for our audience and for us, what is the significance of this program?
Sure, Venkatesh. Firstly, thanks so much for inviting me, and Manish, thanks for the
honor you've extended to us to be on the same platform as yours. I think, firstly, Venkatesh, I would like to convey my sincere thanks to your organization as such, given that I've been a big fan of NSDC, of what it has achieved. And I think the whole mission that NSDC embarked upon a few years ago, firstly, to bring the whole public-private partnership to the fore of how to solve for skilling in India, that has been the central mission of, if you see Facebook at the family of apps, as well as WhatsApp, how do we solve for things at scale? So I think one line which defines this partnership would be solving for skills at scale in a smart manner is what the essence of this partnership is all about. Now where become NSDC or replicate NSDC, and by the way, pardon me for my bad internet today, but I'll try my best to convey the points. I personally feel that at the end of the day, what NSDC is trying to do, WhatsApp can be a very, very credible ally to do that. We have done so in other related fields, and I now think skilling is an idea whose time arrived a while ago, but to solve it at scale, especially post the pandemic, I think we can play a critical role. And we have several learnings from the pandemic which indicate to us that we can actually solve for skilling at scale in partnership with NSDC. I can give several examples of what we have done, especially with certain government agencies. But what it underlines, Venkatesh, is that we are an ally for India, ally to solve for the national goals of the country, for the government, and ally for NSDC to solve for skilling at scale. Let me give you a couple of examples which kind of will your audience, those who are excited to kind of adopt these modules or adopt these training programs. And I'm really thankful to Manish for at least seeing that vision by leading NSDC. For example, MyGov. What did we solve during the pandemic through MyGov? Was communication at scale, communication of accurate and credible information at scale. Similarly, if you look at our programs with organizations like Vahan, solving for blue-collared employment programs at scale, right? If you look at our Kolkata Municipal Corporation chatbot, solving for vaccination awareness at scale. So at the end of the day, our product philosophy of remaining simple, reliable, and secure is what helps solve for at scale. One last example I wanted to give, and we are very excited where our financial services allyship with different companies like HDFC, etc., are working out in the financial inclusion space, with pension being delivered at scale via WhatsApp. Again, we don't want to become a financial services company, but we can become a credible ally, a digital ally, to take these solutions to the last mile. And I'm hoping Manish, with his pragmatic vision, will allow us to solve for him at scale again, as I said, with 400 million plus users in the country. I think skilling is something we definitely must take up as a challenge, which I'm sure Manish's goal is.
Thanks, Shivnath. I think if I pick up at an Uber level, something like the things which I really liked are the scale and skills coming together is a beautiful aspect, the kind of a scale WhatsApp can bring to the ecosystem. And, you know, from skilling perspective, the value add NSDC can have with that kind of a scale. I think that's one of the key things I would take out from your conversation. Now, moving on to Manish, you know, there is always an issue of students and jobs and opportunities for the future, especially in the pandemic times, it becomes more relevant. So, you know, from you, Manish, what is your key take on the jobs for the future? What kind of skills are required in the world of digital economy?
Thanks, Venkatesh. I guess when we talk of the jobs of the future, we need to recognize one aspect of change that has occurred globally, and that's going to impact the way people can access jobs as well as businesses in future, which is the fact that in 1990s you had the internet revolution coming into the world. You know, it changes the way civilization interacts. I can give you one example. That when I joined civil service, that was in 1990s, early 1990s, if there was a complaint in a remote part of village in Tripura, which was the place where I was working, then somebody would write a letter and that would come on the back of an elephant to a subdivisional town. Then from there in a jeep, it'll come down to maybe Agartala, and then somebody gets that information. Now compare that to today, and you know that you can just make a WhatsApp, message, and the policymaker knows what's the problem in that village. What I'm going to say essentially is that the world has changed civilizationally. We have changed since the time of internet. And a lot of things that we see today, including WhatsApp, is riding on the back of that technology platform. This is what we call the life transforming technological change that impacts human civilization as a whole. Now, when that's the scale at which things have changed, obviously what kind of jobs you get, what kind of jobs you aim for, all the changes. Why? Because one of the things which we have noticed is that employers, they basically say that the backend technology is changing very quick. So we need people who can quickly adapt to it, who can quickly learn these new technologies. And how do you learn that? We don't learn that in the traditional way, which is the industry 2.0 way. You're going from class 1 to class 10. This is like a factory line. The way a car is made in a factory line is the same way we have at our education. But what we need now is a very modular kind of education, highly linked to what is it that is needed in that industry, in that specific geographical context. And that's where the power of organizations like WhatsApp, etc., come in, or your tools actually come in, because you can become very precise, you can become very targeted, and you are able to provide highly modular kind of learning, which in 4 hours gives me such sharp knowledge that it is relevant to the industry that is local. So I think becoming highly conscious of the fact that apart from the generic knowledge that you gain, you need to acquire skills that are relevant to the market. That's one part of it. And two other things which I think is critical is maybe policing up your soft skills, because I think that's going to get more and more important. And when I say soft skills, essentially the ability to work in teams, the ability to collaborate. As pandemic showed, competition has limits, and I think the world in future is going to get more and more collaborative. Many countries actually recognize the value of collaboration already, and therefore they thrive well too. Competition has its value in economics, and it leads you up to a certain point. I think collaboration is critical if you want to survive in difficult times. And therefore, how do you build up those kind of team working abilities? Then creativity, that's another thing on which people have to work, and problem solving, complex problem solving. So there are certain types of soft skills on which people will have to focus. Communication definitely is an important one. And the final thing is that I guess apart from looking for jobs, people will have to become more entrepreneurial, because I think technology has unleashed the potential for becoming entrepreneurial. It's your mind and it's your technology, right? And people, things which we could have never imagined, things like Uber, for example, is there are lots of such innovations that rides on the back of technology, and it's to your imagination now that can you really create some value out of the technological innovations that's occurring round the clock. So I think people need to get innovative and look at it from that perspective too. So these were a few things which I wanted to say about this.
Thank you so much, Dr. Manish. In fact, modular learning, soft skills, collaborative skills, what you pointed out are, of course, very, very important in this generation. And the interesting thing I picked up from your answer is also focus on the entrepreneurial mindset, which is important. So not just on jobs. In fact, we are seeing many of the unicorns from India, Zomatos and others of the world, our Urban Labs and Zomatos are planning to get onto their IPO stream. So I think the next decade would be all about startups and entrepreneurship. I really appreciate your point. So moving on further to Mr. Shivnath. So, if you look into the WhatsApp and as an ideal platform for driving digital skilling and building India, how do you particularly see, especially in the pandemic times, the role of WhatsApp as an ideal platform in empowering skilling and digital awareness? Because this is something which would be affecting everyone, especially the students, the people in the colleges. The education ecosystem is affected a lot, so there are digital interventions. I would like to know from WhatsApp, how do you look up to your platform as an ideal platform for digital skilling and building digital awareness?
Venkatesh, again, I'll build on examples, but let me first link it to what Manish just said. The whole play about entrepreneurship. If there is one thing the pandemic has taught us, is to how it triggered out of adversity, an amazing entrepreneurial fire in people because they had to survive. And we saw it at urban level, we saw it at the village level, we saw it at semi-urban level, and we have several examples with which I can tell you the use of WhatsApp allowed people to feel empowered to launch their business, expand markets for their existing business, and relaunch their what they did before the pandemic to reorient their business to a new thing. I will give you an example. We have a very significant partner in the name of Mandeshi Bank and Mandeshi Foundation. Chetna is the founder. And just with the use of the SMB app, which I believe is a part of the skilling program with NSDC as well, how to train people, we initiatives in order doing that. And our point is, at the end of the day, we through entrepreneurial examples unleashed a different kind of a desire in people. That's one way to look at it. Again, with the CSC, at the central level, to deliver skilling program to people who were disconnected by the pandemic and training them on things, and then them building on their local produce to deliver to newer markets is another example. So either way you look at it, the use of WhatsApp was able to link the entrepreneurial hunger or the entrepreneurial fire in people to train them, to use the app, and to open new markets. So I think at the end of the day, if you want to solve for skilling, there are two aspects of it. One, what are you skilling them with, which I think NSDC is the expert. And we at a product level can tell them what kind of product expertise they need to know of. And then how do they deploy it? And which is again the soft skilling part that Manish talked about. I think either way you look at it, the use of technology as a vehicle to drive the delivery of that eventual goal is going to be critical. And for us, 400 million plus are perfectly poised to solve for these complex issues in a manner which Manish touched upon by saying traditional models can no longer do, right? If you were to imagine a future where a pandemic kind of put on hold the entire education system, and yet thanks to our partnership with CSC or even the launch of the Ministry of Education chatbot called Dikshatara, not a single day of disruption happened, right? We have examples in partners like Convigenius, etc., who have used the chatbot as well as WhatsApp to deliver education 24/7 during the pandemic. What does it go to prove? That any adversity, if you think of deploying technology in a more intelligent manner and in a manner which people can use, it isn't like, oh, I've got this massively complex solution and hence people should accept the delivery of a product. Hence, at WhatsApp, our fundamental belief is you tell us the problem, we will try and figure out whether this can be solved or not. And I'm hugely thankful to the entire Indian user base that they continue to innovate constantly to either be the recipient of a good thing that's happening on WhatsApp or using it to deliver something good for the rest of the society.
Thanks, Shiv. And I also, Shivnath, one of the points which you mentioned, which I really want to highlight is in the current times when technology is moving very fast and things are changing, businesses are changing, launching businesses, expanding and reorienting themselves to various situations, whether it is pandemic or maybe some situations which may emerge later. So, WhatsApp gives that kind of an value add to end users, not just at an urban level, even at a rural level, everybody has an access to it. That's the beauty of the scale and also the dynamic situation in which WhatsApp can shift trends and also connect with people solving their problems. So moving on to Manish, Manish, you touched upon the importance of entrepreneurship and how students should look at it. Just going a little bit further, as the Prime Minister, Honorable Prime Minister also keeps talking about the mindset change, especially in the youth, from a job seeker to a job creator. I would like to, hear from you. What's your message to a lot of students who have joined us or for the youth of the nation, from job seeker to a job creator mindset?
I think firstly, this is a great time to be a job creator for reasons that we spoke of, that we are essentially in a technological curve, which is rapidly changing and therefore creating many new opportunities. It's basically dependent on your ability to create. So in that sense, it's perfectly a good time. I think few things which are quite critical for when we plan of entrepreneurship. One is, I think, the ability for people to go beyond their comfort zone. Many people like to stick to their comfort zone, and I think it's necessary to challenge that. And how do you do that? I guess a few of the ways to do that is look at examples of people around you who have done it, who might have failed, but still they persisted because they had certain values on which they strongly believed, and eventually they made it. So the satisfaction that comes out of the struggle is of a very high order. So I guess uh, people need to challenge their comfort zone firstly. Secondly, I think it's very important that uh, you create the right set of team for this purpose, because in trying to be entrepreneurial, you need to become creative. And usually in literatures of creativity, what we have found is that only half the solution is with one person, the other half is with somebody else. And therefore you need to be looking. You can't, you are not necessarily the one who has everything. That there are other people around you who will actually have some pieces of that solution, and therefore having that right set of people around you with whom you could partner so that your creativity is enhanced, that your solutions are far much more objective and far much more, let's say, related to the solution that you are seeking. So that comes through. A third thing which I would suggest is mixing around with people who are entrepreneurial, because it's like, you imbibe the spirit of the kind of people that you are meeting. And it doesn't matter which field that person might be working, but there are different type of people. And I think if you are interacting with entrepreneurial people more often, you would tend to gain their energy. You would tend to gain their insights too. So I think that's something which you have to hunt for. You have to look around for. I would also encourage people to read quite a bit on that. So I usually consider every book as a condensed thought of an individual. It's a personality of an individual. And when you're reading about somebody who is entrepreneurial, reading a book about him, or reading a book written by that person, then you tend to absorb a lot of the values of that person. So you need to spend the reading also. And a final thing which I consider very important, and I think that's something which is lacking in our culture, but is necessary for us to build, is you need to celebrate failure. Everybody who is entrepreneurial will fail. You will fail once, twice. Yeah, unless you are very lucky, you'll succeed the very first time. But usually people will fail. And I think we should understand that when it comes to entrepreneurship, failing once, twice is okay. And I think you need to understand that you are learning in each of these steps where you are failing. That's the important part of it. The celebration is for the learning that has come to you. You would not necessarily become a perfect entrepreneur on your very first attempt unless you're exceptionally lucky. So I guess accepting failure and learning from failure and making that as the stepping stone for your next venture, that's the attitude one should have. So those are a few of my thoughts, Venkatesh. Thanks.
Thanks, Dr. Manish.
Venkatesh, Venkatesh, can I just link on that? I'm sorry, I'm just jumping in.
Sure, absolutely.
I love the train of thought that Manish put out. Talking about the creative aspect and seeking help. I think those are the two signs of an entrepreneur saying, how do I constantly reinvent myself? I want to share a couple of examples just to prove how the entrepreneurial zeal in India is so interwoven with our culture. A lot of people say, oh, everything has to be about a unicorn. But I want to give you a couple of examples again. There was this hosiery making unit in rural Maharashtra. They realized that their market got shut down due to the pandemic, etc. They reoriented their business into making masks and then adopted the usage of WhatsApp to create markets for themselves, and eventually became one of the largest mask making units. All that they did was to reinvent, be creative, and sought the help of technology. One example. The second example, which is a lot of people actually get amused when I give this example, is to set up a virtual animal market using WhatsApp's video calling feature. It was like a group of vets, animal specialists, and they created a goat market. Now, you may say, like, what the heck, why? But look at the way they oriented themselves, because they could not travel to those rural markets anymore. They created a goat market or a virtual animal market using WhatsApp. Similarly, I mean, when you talk about use of technology to be more creative, using the SMB app, any store today can replicate the virtual store through catalogs, carts. So as if you're walking into a store, all you have to orient yourself saying that instead of going to the Kirana, if the Kirana store is coming to me on my phone via WhatsApp. So I think there are millions of examples like this, which I can give you, where we have witnessed how these people are able to reinvent, seek help from technology. And the last point, which Manish said, is that at the end of the day, if you're connected with this community, what happens is entrepreneurship is infectious. Like when you get to see other person has created value, it is all about you getting triggered on that one. And we have seen via WhatsApp these groups where we've been asked to come and train. People are like have that hunger to say, okay, I also want to learn about the SMB app, right? As I speak, I believe there's some question which is popping up, which should be something that I'm sure you will take up. Somebody saying, how do I get a WhatsApp business account? I mean, these are the questions which kind of evoke the entrepreneurial zeal, I think, which Manish was talking about. And we are happy to help at any point in time.
That's so nice, Shivnath, the kind of examples you gave across India, especially in the pandemic times, how people have reinvented their businesses. And that shows, and also with the kind of a scale you have, the kind of an impact they can create with their creative ideas. And also really like the fact that Dr. Manish touched upon the celebration of failure, which is extremely important in a country like India, because failure is not seen something with an open hands, and people don't much appreciate that. And that mindset has to change, because celebrating failure is about a stepping stone, and learning is something which is very important, especially from an entrepreneurship mindset. And moving on further, to you, Shivnath, back again, this program, Digital Skills Champion Program, which you are launching today, does it also address the financial inclusion and the new age digital financial platforms?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you look at the way we look at financial inclusion, it needs to be a subset of digital inclusion, Venkatesh. I mean, eventually, if you don't have digital access, talking about financial inclusion, at least from our lens, is a bit difficult to fathom. But just to give you examples of this again, what is it that we are trying to solve when we say we want financial inclusion goals to be met? We are actually trying to solve for those who do not have either access, awareness, or affordability, right? And which is where we feel WhatsApp can help solve for some of these goals. I was giving you the pension example. What we are trying to do here is making sure that we are able to solve for these three. WhatsApp, from an access point of view, I'm assuming 400 million plus is a good user base to start with. Awareness, we have been talking to enough financial services companies where they feel they can, using our chatbots or different innovative solutions, they can solve for the last mile where people either don't get to know or are not able to access information or are aware of it. Then come the affordability. What is happening is at the last mile, if you take the intermediary out, I mean, when I say intermediary, I mean the middleman who is supposed to sell a financial product out, then automatically you are able to establish a direct line of connection. So that solves for the 3 A's: access, affordability, and awareness. And then comes our partnership or allyship with the financial services sector. What is it doing? We are not becoming a pension company. I'm not becoming an insurance company. And yet, by working with SBI Life Insurance, I can create sachet-sized insurance plans which somebody can go and buy. Underlying all this, if you see, and we have not talked about it, WhatsApp Pay, we are late to the party, as they say, and we got approvals only in November. And you will see as we rise to the occasion on WhatsApp payment, we would be able to give the last mile. Everybody gets excited about digital payment in urban centers. But imagine if WhatsApp Pay, the way people use WhatsApp, if they are able to transact digitally beyond the excitement of the urban centers. You have suddenly taken the Prime Minister's vision of a cashless society or a digital India to a different level altogether. Again, remember, what are we doing? Solving at scale. I mean, that remains the underlying factor here as far as we are concerned. And what could be Unleash eventually? Unleash microcredit to small business owners, again in partnership, help bring down cost of banking, which is the fundamental solve for financial inclusion. And by the way, people who say that banks are not interested, they're absolutely wrong. Between solving for the last mile, banks are super excited and innovating with us. on fronts like micro insurance, micro pension, innovating their product. And they were stranded by solving for the 3 A's, right? Access, affordability, and awareness. We are bringing that allyship to the table. And hence, I think, as Manish also said, eventually, when you seek help, when you deploy technology to go beyond the traditional ways of doing it, I think financial inclusion is the next goal. We've got very positive feedback from the government, from stakeholders, including the central bank. They all support what we can solve for. And I think we are quite excited. As we say, the game has just begun, and I think the excitement is yet to unfold.
Absolutely, Shivnath, and I appreciate the kind of work you guys are doing, and also the importance of microcredit and financial inclusion at the bottom of the pyramid is extremely important. Even that's one of the key aspects World Economic Forum touches when it talks about Indian ecosystem. So with the kind of a scale you have and the kind of connect you have in the ecosystem, you can actually be a kind of a collaborator, bringing in large institutions and banking on one side and extending their, as you said, sachet size products and offerings to the ecosystem using technology. I think that would be a big game changer as we move into the next decade. So moving on further to Dr. Manish, you've been in the understanding this ecosystem at the policy level. At the same time, at the industry side, you actively work with the sector scale councils, guiding them. So how do you see that academic, and the government partnerships in bridging the industry academic gaps, especially in driving workforce development? There's always a gap between the industry and what academia needs. And how are you seeing to bridge that gap and contributing to the workforce development? Some thoughts from your side.
So I think when it comes to the gap between industry and academia and how government is helping in a way bridge that gap, there is a very deep understanding within the government about the economic nature of skills, the fact that it's a case of market failure, and it's a case of market failure globally. Traditionally, where market works well, governments don't interfere. It lets the market function. But where market fails, the government comes in and tries to sort it out. So if you look at skills in its full range, what you'll find is that 20% of India, the labor force, are in the formal space, and remaining 80% is in the informal space. And the 80% which is in informal space is where market functions even poorer. Essentially, it implies that industry would not skill a person beyond a certain level with their own money, because they're afraid that the person whom I have skilled is going to be poached by somebody else, my competitor, and therefore you lose. So what does the similar such programs in state governments? There is DDU-GKY coming from Ministry of Rural Development. So there are multitude programs which is focused on skilling. And the idea is to skill these 80% of labor force that is on the informal sector. There is, of course, some money also for the formal sector, but more of it, and rightly so from the government side, goes to the informal sector. And every year from NSDC, we skill about 2.5 million people approximately in a normal year. And we also try to assess through this PMKVY, people whom we skill, does it lead to any change in their wages? And what we have found that compared to a cohort, same cohort, somebody who is unskilled and gets a job, compared to that, somebody who is skilled and gets a job, there's a 15% differential in wages. That shows the power of skilling that comes to government's programming. So essentially, government is bridging this gap between, let's say, academia and industry, by providing the sort way of education has its value up to a certain point. But if you want to attach it to the industry, or you want to make it relevant for industry, then you need to do something more at the cutting edge. And with the help of all these 37 sector skill councils, which have been created over time, we have devised what we call qualification packs. These are like 3 months, very specialized courses in 37 different sectors that is imparted to these 2.5 million people that we skill through NSDC, and maybe another 2.5 million through various other programs, eventually assessment being done by the ecosystem that we have created. We have about 11,000 centers across the country, more 700 plus partners who operate, private sector partners who operate in this space. So I think they have made there is a very good, I guess, filling up of the gap that has occurred. In the long term, I guess if you look at the recent education policy, there's a recognition of trying to embed skilling into education itself. And I think that's a fantastic move. And that's, I guess, the next phase. We are at the moment in discussion with CBSE to see how skills could be embedded into schools. As you are aware that we operate in many schools across India, but they are, I think the scale at which we operate is very small compared to India challenges schools. And the next days with the education policy would be seeing more of skilling getting into schools and in some sense integrating with the regular academics. So therefore, the differential would be that, okay, you acquire certain generic skill, that is generic knowledge through the regular academic courses, but there would be a booster course which is more about skills that you gain if you wanted to join the workforce. So that's the manner in which we'll go forward. And NSDC is very much involved in that process too, as we plan forward. Thanks, Venkatesh.
Thanks, Dr. Manish. You touched upon the sector skill councils, how they're playing role in bridging the gap, and also for the 2.5 million people, NSDC skilling, how you're introducing these very interesting modular-led industry-driven courses, which can really impact them from driving employability and skills which are required for the workforce. Moving on further, my question to Mr. Shivnath would be, so there is a lot of interesting launches you have done around chatbots for citizens in the past, and have you access primarily to access information to bridge the gaps. So if you would like to touch upon a little bit on WhatsApp's chatbots and its growing relevance, especially in the pandemic times for Digital India.
Oh, sure, Venkatesh. I briefly mentioned some of them, but let me stress upon how we feel our approach on the chatbot, of course, got, I would say, amplified due to the pandemic, where we were thrown challenges to solve for issues which we had never dealt with. And let me give you a range of topics on which we tried to solve for it. I talked about MyGov. At the time when the pandemic began, if you remember, there was a hunger for credible and accurate information. And we all recognized and realized at that point in time, what we need to get across to people is accurate and credible information, and that was coming through from government sources. That was the fundamental source of truth. And MyGov, I must tell you today, is one of the world's largest chatbots talking to people on a daily basis. So accurate and credible information to solve for. Then if you look at how we have partnered with the National Commission of Women in terms of safety and security, not just for women who got affected by the pandemic, but in general as an approach to safety and security of our users. I think NCW is a very good example under the chairperson's direction of how we can deliver the message, create helplines, create real-time accurate information, especially for expectant mothers, and solve for that at scale. Then comes the issue of solving for food, another chatbot which helps to make sure food distribution is done efficiently and allocated to those who need it. Similarly, the vaccination piece, if you look at it, what we are working on. I mean, there are several such examples where we felt that to deliver government to citizen services can be solved at scale using these chatbots. COVID Meals for India, India Shield, X-Ray Setu, Robin Hood Army. There are many such examples. And by the way, even in traditional government to citizen services, for example, in tax in Andhra Pradesh or Chennai Municipal Corporation, we've had a solution. In Gurgaon, for example, at the height of the second wave, allocation of beds, availability of beds, working with the district collector of Gurgaon, we launched a chatbot. I think either way you look at it, our fundamental belief is not whether the chatbot is the solution. Our belief is whether we can solve a complex problem where access of information and availability in real time has to be solved for, and which is where WhatsApp's technological prowess comes in. Even for NSDC, I think what is very interesting is, and a lot of people don't give enough credit to government efforts or government programs. One of the reasons we believe, if we can get your e-skills and everything through the chatbot as well, one credit you have to give to the government, India has abundance of digital infrastructure today. It may not have abundance of physical infrastructure, but you cannot complain that in India, digital does not work. it does work. It may not work for the last mile, which is what we are trying to solve for. And what NSDC's partnership brings to the table for us, at least, Venkade, is to solve for a real life problem. What Manish touched upon is, I want to be an entrepreneur. I don't know enough, or I'm already an existing entrepreneur. How can I do more? Which is where the role of technology, I think, comes in. And by the way, I'm not saying anything new. WhatsApp happens to be the technology of today and the future. Technology has played a critical role. You go back to industrial revolution, you come to the early 70s internet, come to the early 80s, what desktops did. I think WhatsApp is at the cusp of that cutting edge where through simplicity of our approach, we can solve at scale.
I really appreciate some of the examples you gave and the last closing thing you said on simplicity and the scale. I think that's the beauty of it, because a lot of people use WhatsApp from a scale perspective, and the simplicity with which you can approach can really be a game changer. And I think in interest of time, because we're almost done with our time limit, I would like to pick up one or two questions from the chat box. One is centric to a specific need. An individual who runs an NGO wants to drive some soft skill programs, and after hearing your speech, Shivnath, is inspired. He wants to open up a WhatsApp account, business account. Maybe your team can get in touch with him. And this is a very interesting area, empowering the people, especially at a rural space, by some of your offerings in the SMB. Maybe team can get in touch with him. Then I also have a very interesting view and a question by an individual, focused around vocational education that is introduced as part of the National Education Policy 2020. And, from class 6, he wants to understand the views from Dr. Manish about the relevance of this and how successful this initiative can lead us towards a better workforce development and matching the industry standards. Dr. Manish?
Yeah, so for, I think, new education policy and vocational education from class 6, there are a few things which we need to be aware of when it comes to skilling. So skilling is not aspirational in India, as we know. It's something which was not always true. In the past, if you go back into history, India is actually filled with such rich architecture, such rich accomplishments, regardless of which field you look into, that we were highly skilled as people. But I think down the line, with Macaulay coming in somewhere in between, most of us aspired to become clerks in British companies, and eventually, I think we aspired to be in some way connected to government, and that's how I think our history evolved in the later part. So now, the skill not being aspirational, how do you bring back this whole thought process that skill is not really a negative word, right? I mean, the fact that we were always skilled, that skill was valued, that skill was paid for, that skill can get you a good job as well as good respect in the society. That's something which you have to begin working at from schools. So if you look at some of the best examples in the world, for example, in Finland, you find children actually first learning skills before they actually pick up alphabets. You find them learning skills right from the very first time they actually get into schools, and they begin to fiddle around with tools and understand, okay, what does plumbing mean? And I think that creates respect in the mind for the work too. And everybody grows up with a feeling that this is not something which is inferior, superior. It's something I enjoy. And that's the reason I picked that up to be my vocation. I think that exploration begins early in life. And class 6 is an okay time. In other parts of the world is done even earlier. And therefore, from the aspirational side, this is critical, I would say. Secondly, for somebody who might not be too keen to be doing, let's say, a master's course eventually, but wants to acquire skills that after +2 or maybe class 10, they want to get into some jobs. This is a perfect moment, because from 6 up to 10, if a person has focused on some specific skill that he or she enjoys, then you would have enough by the time you're out that market will value you, will respect you for the abilities that you have acquired, and will pay you well. So you can create your profession out of it. And in every way, therefore, I personally feel that the education policy, with its focus on skilling from class 6, is actually an extremely good step. And depending upon how it is implemented, it can really be a game changer for the informal sector in India that often gets into the job without any skills and actually learns on the job and therefore suffers hugely. Some of the analytics that we have done have shown that people who get into jobs are unskilled but get into a job, or semi-skilled get into a job. When you ask them that how much you expected compared to what you have, in average, they get about 10,000 rupee or 9,000 rupee approximately, and their expectation from life is 18,000. And that's the reason why there's attrition, such a high attrition. And when you talk to the employer asking that, why don't you pay them 18? Why do you pay them just 9? They say that, okay, we expected the person to be far more skilled. We would have paid them 18 if he or she was actually skilled to the level that I wanted. I'll be observing this person for another 1 year, 2 years. If that person is really good, I'm actually going to pay 18. So therefore there is this disjunct of aspiration and what the person gets paid. And you could breeze that by ensuring that the person is fully skilled by the time they actually begin to look for workforce or work opportunity when they are out of the schools. So Venkatesh, those are some preliminary thoughts on this issue. It's a complex one, but just few thoughts.
Yeah, interesting, Manish. It's good to see the intervention of vocational skilling introduced at a school level. As you rightly said, there are different countries in Scandinavia and Europe, and even in developed countries who have done it even before. And I think implementation of how we deliver this makes a lot of relevance, and especially keeping in mind the skills aspiration. And that's something a mindset requirement is required in. And I think this new education policy which introduced will bring that mindset. Moving on to the last question, maybe we'll pick up one more. This is for Shivnath. There are 400 million users of WhatsApp. That's a huge number in India. And the person wants to know how WhatsApp, or what are the plans WhatsApp has, especially in learning, because of a lot of lockdowns and others, what have happened. The physical structures have come to close downs and everything is happening digitally. For schools and colleges and the other educational setups, how does WhatsApp look into, with the kind of a scale it has, to bring in more learning apps, or maybe empower startups to partner with to drive this ecosystem of especially learning during the pandemic, or as you go forward post-pandemic also?
Venkatesh, thanks for asking that question, and I'm glad you asked this at the end. When we talk about 400 million numbers, I must also very openly say that we also recognize the responsibility that it brings with it. For us, the focus and my message to the youth or anyone listening to this is, technology is up to you how you use it. We will do everything to keep our platform safe. But remember, WhatsApp is also encrypted. We don't get to see your messages. So my first request and the message to everyone is, we know our responsibility, and we also request everyone to use it responsibly and keep the platform safe. Second, in terms of learning, I think Manish touched upon some of the fantastic thoughts around skilling. If I may, with your permission, I remember an anecdote which the Prime Minister used to make in one of his speeches around entrepreneurship, saying,
I think there's a loss of connection there. We would wait for Shivnath to come back. Maybe let's give us maybe 30 seconds or so.
entrepreneurs. Similarly, with NSDC, our aim is, you are good at skilling. We want to partner with you. Please remember, we do not want to become the owners of this domain. What we want to do is become as much of a partner with everybody in this domain. So as I said, WhatsApp is in a way, open platform. We are happy to partner with anybody who has a learning solution. Examples like NSDC, examples like CSC, examples like Convergenius. go on to prove. In fact, you talked about the new education policy, the example of Madhya Pradesh. Madhya Pradesh actually calls out, it's because of WhatsApp we were able to continue to deliver education during the pandemic. So as I said, whether it's the state, whether it's the private sector, whether it's public-private partnership as yours, we are looking at skilling across the country, learning across the country by partnership. That's our approach. As I said at the very beginning, a digital ally to this country, and doing everything which is good for India as far as WhatsApp and family of apps is concerned.
Thank you, Shivnath, and I believe this partnership will really help us build that scale, and we can, leverage the institutional synergies between NSDC as well as WhatsApp in a big way. So now to celebrate this moment and to kickstart our partnership and the occasion, I would request a small animation video to be played out, which is because we are in a digital world, it's more of a digital handshake because of workload, scenarios of the COVID situations. So can I request the IT team to play the animation video to celebrate the occasion? Thank you so much, for this moment of celebration of bringing into large institutional organizations, both from an NSDC perspective and WhatsApp, to address a big area, which is digital skilling. And we believe that with the institutional synergies we have, we would be able to address that need. And with this, I would like to thank Shivnath and Dr. Manish for their valuable time joining us today. Help answer many aspects of digital skilling, how technology is changing, and the industry academia gaps, and also about the program and what we can do for the future. Really appreciate their valuable time. And I also appreciate the time of the teams at NSDC and WhatsApp for coordinating and putting a nice event, put across a nice event like this, which addresses the needs of the people and also gives them an idea of what's happening. Especially this kind of awareness is extremely required during pandemic times. I would also love to thank the press and media who joined us today, students from various colleges and schools, faculty, tutors, teachers who joined us today, and NSDC training partners across India who've been here to listen to and also take the advantage of this program. Thank you, everyone, and really appreciate your time for joining. And if you have any questions, do write us, and you can drop in on your chat box, and we would love to address them. Post the event also, we can mail them back. Thank you so much, everyone. With this, I would call the end of the event, and thank you for your valuable time.
Thank you, Venkatesh. Thank you, Manish.
Thanks.